Good morning, everyone, and welcome to University Unitarian Church in Seattle, Washington. It's Sunday, November 28th, the Thanksgiving weekend. My name is Jon Luopa. I'm one of the ministers here and happy to greet you this morning, those who are with us in person here in the chapel and those who are joining us on the live stream audience. It's good to be together. Just a reminder that when we are in the building, we remain masked at all times. And we invite you to join us for coffee and conversation after the service in Nathan Johnson Hall, which you will find right in front of you as you leave the chapel this morning. For any who may be interested in learning more about this church or Unitarian Universalism, each Sunday after the service, we host an information session downstairs in the Dix room. And you may find that room by going down the stairway and taking a left and then a right. It's right there, and we welcome you to it. You may find a closed today sign on the office door. We've given our office manager, Jessica Monahan, the day off so that she can have a long weekend with her family over this Thanksgiving holiday. But the office is open, and there are many other staff here who are happy to help you with any requests or concerns that you might have. When the pandemic began and it was thought that the virus was spread by touch, we stopped passing the offering plate during the services, and we have, of course, since learned that that is not the case, that it's an airborne virus, and hence the masking is more necessary. So today we will begin by reintroducing the passing of the plate during the offering. And for those of you who knew what this room looked like before the renovation, there was one main aisle, not two, and our ushers are going to have a good time getting those plates back and forth. So a smile is appreciated and some patience as we return to an old practice. My colleague, Beth Chronister, is away this weekend and will return for next Sunday. Let us begin the service with our Prelude. Let us enter into the fellowship of this morning with heart and mind and spirit. May our hearts be opened with sensitivity to the joys and sorrows, the hopes and burdens of those who sit beside us. And may our minds be enlarged to understand the many languages we speak as we struggle to give voice to the wisdom that lies within each of us. May our spirits be attuned to the deepest chords of reality as we seek to center ourselves in communion with the mystery of being. As we open ourselves to this hour of worship, may our souls find peace, and may the blessings of love be present with us in our togetherness. I invite you to stand or remain seated as we listen to the doxology and our opening hymn, We Gather Together.
Come all that
As our ushers come forward to receive the morning offering, I invite you to join me in saying the words that are printed here on the screen. This church is a community of ourselves. Its energy and resources are our energy and resources. Its wealth is what we share. When we contribute to the life of this community, we affirm our lives within it. I invite you now to join me in a spirit of prayer and meditation as we take a moment to quiet and center ourselves, seeking that which renews us as a person and as people. I've shared with you before these words I'm about to share again, and they were written by Max Kapp, who was a Universalist minister first and then a Unitarian Universalist minister. He spent most of his ministry in upstate New York. He also taught at the St. Lawrence Theological School, when there was a theological school there for the Universalist Church in America. And he was a denominational official and a real booster for the merger of the two denominations in 1961. Max is reputed to have said that religion is the poetry which is believed, something I've always found to be a pretty appropriate and true statement. He considered himself to be a naturalistic, mystical theist. How about that? Nothing is very simple, of course, for Unitarians, so he included all of those descriptors. Naturalistic and mystical and a theist. And by all reports, for those who knew and loved him in the days of his years, was a sweet, sweet, wonderful human being. This is what he said. Often I have felt that I must praise my world for what my eyes and ears have seen these many years, and what my heart has loved. And often I have tried to start my lines, "Dear Earth," I say, and then I pause and look once more, and soon I am bemused and far away in wonder, and never get beyond, "Dear Earth." May it be so. Amen. As I said in the first service, we have such a nice mix of music today, and I know how frustrated we are by not yet being able to sing in the services and to hear our choirs. Gratefully, the bell choir is still able to perform, and our soloists. We have another special guest this morning, Dwight's twin brother on the vibraphone here. And Marianne, good to have you back with us. And of course, our one and only Dwight Beckmeyer, who has kind of been the rock in the music program these many months. And not only is his talent extraordinary, but he's just a delight to work with. And that's big. That's really big. So thank you so much for that. Our second hymn this morning is hymn number 21, "For the Beauty of the Earth." Remain standing, seated or standing as you wish.
Over and
I have two readings to share with you before the sermon. One is pretty short, and the other one is a tiny bit longer. And that's the first one, and it comes from Diane Ackerman's book, A Natural History of the Senses, of the Five Senses. Diane Ackerman. She wrote, "Nothing is more memorable than a smell. One scent can be unexpected, momentary and fleeting, yet conjure up a childhood summer beside a lake in the mountains. Another, a moonlit beach. A third, a family dinner of pot roast and sweet potatoes during a myrtle-mad August in a Midwestern town. Smells detonate softly in our memory like poignant landmines hidden under the weedy mass of years." That's a great sentence. That's a great sentence. Smells detonate softly in our memory like poignant landmines hidden under the weedy mass of years. Hit a tripwire of smell, and memories explode all at once, and a complex vision leaps out of the undergrowth. Diane Ackerman, A Natural History of the Senses. And from the Christian scriptures from the book of Acts, one sentence. "And the multitude of them that believed were of one heart and one soul. None of them said what they possessed was their own, but rather that they held all things in common." When I first started in the ministry, I was a big fan of the novels of Anne Tyler. She started her writing career just at that time. I went into ministry in the very early 1980s, and as a result, she wrote lots of books over the course of her writing career. In one of those books, she tells the story of a figure named Ezra, who ran a restaurant, and all lifelong, feeding people was his way of caring for them. I'm sure you've known forever, but I only learned just not too long ago that there are something called love languages, and that different people have different ways of expressing their love for other people. And one of those ways is cooking for the people who are most important to you. This is really an elaborate ritual, and it's one that I am deeply committed to, as was my mother and my grandmother and my great-grandmother. A great deal of satisfaction in planning just the right menu and shopping for the ingredients and cooking and then sharing the meal and watching carefully the faces of affirmation and delight most of the time were the expected responses. But that was Ezra's course of action too. He took great delight in feeding people, and he made friends with Mrs. Scarlatti, who owned Scarlatti's restaurant. And he worked for her. And when she got ready to retire, she turned that business over to him. And being a new business owner, he tried different menus and formats for his clients. And one day, this idea came to him, quote from the book, "He would cook what people felt homesick for. Tacos like those from vendors' carts in California, which the Mexican was always pining after, and that wonderful vinegary North Carolina barbecue that Todd Duckett had to have brought by his mother several times a year in cardboard cups. And he would call his restaurant the Homesick Restaurant," close quote. Hence the title of her novel, Dinner at the Homesick Restaurant. What kind of food do you get homesick for? I read that when Alexander Julian, the fashion designer of the Colors label and a North Carolina native, designed the uniforms for the Charlotte Hornets he was paid in monthly installments of North Carolina barbecue. And I know a transplanted Georgian here in Seattle, and whenever he goes to Emma's barbecue in South Seattle, he almost drinks the sauce. Because for him, it's like mother's milk, you see. What kind of food are you homesick for? A regional dish? An ethnic dish? A dish you can only get at home? Are your taste buds beginning to awaken? Or are your memories? Because as Diane Ackerman said, food and memories go together. Nothing like a scent that can trigger all kinds of hopefully wonderful memories about the past. And food is always more than just food. The food you're homesick for has to do with more than taste. It has to do with a certain time and a certain place and the experience of joy or comfort or love because it tastes like home. When you were growing up and not feeling well, did your mom serve you some special kind of food so that now, even as an adult, when you're feeling weak, you hunger for the same food and for the hands that prepared it? What was your favorite meal growing up? In our family, whoever has the birthday gets to choose the menu for the day, and everyone else has to participate in putting together that feast. What do you cook for a child who comes home who's been gone a while to welcome them back into the family embrace? And what do you like to eat when you go home? You may be remembering someone's cooking. I have so many memories of this. And when my wife and I think of this, we remember her dad. He paid his way through college in North Carolina by frying chicken, and his banana cream pie was without equal. And in my own case, I think of my mother's Swedish meatballs, which I cannot get exactly right, as my daughters tell me, and her buttercream torte, which is a cardiac event in the making, believe me. Some of these things just raise my cholesterol happily every time I think about them. And there's a person here who told me that her great aunt Marion, whose home was the only home she ever had, she didn't get along with her parents, and it was the same great aunt Marion, sweet potato pie, that she was most homesick for now that her aunt had died. And every time she went home, Aunt Marion made that pie, and it wasn't just the pie that she was homesick for, though the taste was wonderful enough, but it was going into her home and being in her kitchen and smelling the food and smelling the kitchen and the warmth of the kitchen and the smell and the warmth of her apron. I have memories of this too, of sitting in my great-grandmother's lap and smelling her apron as if I had gone to heaven. And when you put a mouthful of that pie into your mouth, what it tastes like is home and love and friendship and acceptance and somebody who was there for you when you needed them. It occurs to me that a church is something like a homesick restaurant. It's a place where we look for and often find what we are most homesick for. And it is a place, in my experience, where homesick people come. Sometimes we don't even know we're homesick until we get here, and suddenly something reminds us of our true home. Funny, when you're really homesick, you don't even feel like eating until you get home. And when your legs are under the table, you feel like you could eat forever. I think there are things that we hunger for all our lives. No one here has been spared the occasional visit by a crushing sense of loneliness or vulnerability. We're homesick for a feeling of being part of something that is bigger than ourselves, that was here before us and that will continue after we are no longer here. A place big enough and varied enough and rich enough, and yet not so big that we get lost in it. We need at least one or two or more persons to know who we are when we come in the front door, who can greet us by name, who remember some of our story, who inquire about a recent illness or a setback, someone who knows that we are alive and yearning and struggling and breathing and happy just like them. And that kind of recognition in community is not an instant thing. It takes time, and it takes patience, and it takes effort. And those who are married or partnered or in deep friendships know the truth of this, that it takes time to build those kind of bonds with other people. And we know that too here in this community. We come together to share whatever hurts or hopes have possessed us and to share our experience of life. Leo Bebb, the odd evangelist in one of Frederick Buechner's novels called Love Feast, once threw a Thanksgiving meal and invited anybody in town who would come. And when they all assembled around the table, he said to them, quote, "Look, we all have secrets, hurtful things, long ago things. Sometimes we're scared, sometimes we're lonesome, but most of the time we hide these things. It's like every one of us has lost his way so bad and don't even know which way is home anymore. Only we're ashamed to ask. And do you know what would happen if we owned up that we were lost and asked? Why, what would happen is we might discover that home is each other. We'd find out home is where those who accept us, loving us, lost or found, or any which way," close quote. That's an interesting idea, isn't it? Home is each other. God, I certainly feel that way, and lucky to feel that way in my own marriage, to someone who knows me, as she reminds me, better than I know myself. And sometimes it's the best home that we've ever had, even though we've all come from homes. In Tyler's novel, Ezra kept trying to get his family together for a meal in the restaurant, and they never made it through a whole meal without getting into a big fight. And somebody stomping out and everything falling apart. Oh, God, have you been there? And one time they didn't even make it through the appetizer. Maybe we've got to realize that the best home of all is not the one behind us, but the one before us, ahead, the one we anticipate and work toward as we suffer the process of a promise to live together with those who accept us, as Buechner says, lost or found, or any which way. There are people here who possess the capacity to understand you, because there is almost nothing they have not experienced themselves. Feeling every human push and pull, every exaltation and desolation, every broken heart, and every heart on fire. And so we ought not sit here with arms crossed and feet up, wondering if people are smart enough or hungry enough to come. We should invite other people to this place, because we know that here we can be fed by the ways in which we connect with each other, and that can even be healing to us. Hunger resides in every human heart. Hunger to search and to find and to accept and to be accepted and to become the persons we were born to become together. And I have said this many times over many decades as a minister, and I will always say this, that there exists a redemptive power in our ability to lovingly connect with each other so that we might grow and the other might grow as well. I've seen it happen time and time again. And I have been a guest at the Homesick restaurant. And now, like Ezra, I've had the business turned over to me. I will put on my apron and approach your table. Well, hello. How did you get here? What may I do? How can I help you? And you may stammer and ask for a little more time, and you're not always sure what you want and what you're most homesick for. I notice you're wearing a Mariners baseball cap, so I'm going to assume that you're a Northwesterner here. How about gooey duck? Oh, no gooey duck for me. Are you sure that's what you're not looking for? Have you tried our cannelloni, our latkes, our southern fried chicken, or perhaps the sweet potato pie? That's it. That sounds good. And you smile with recognition. And you're nervous about the price. And you look over on the right-hand column of the menu, the place where the prices usually are, and to your consternation, you see no prices. And you know you're in trouble when the menu doesn't put the price on itself. But appreciating your anxiety, I will say to you, don't worry, friend. It's on the house. Welcome home. Happy Thanksgiving. Amen. Our closing hymn is hymn number 128, For All That Is Our Life. It's been a tough time the last year or so, of course, we all know that, dealing with feelings of isolation and loneliness and frustration, and we think we're getting a little bit better nationally, internationally, and then another piece of news comes and everybody panics and the stock market goes down and all that kind of crazy stuff once again, when this is just what's going to keep happening, okay? And despite all of that, there still are many, many things to be grateful for. One big one, I think, is the fact that we are actually able to gather at all in community, even though we are masked and maintain distance. what would it be like if we were just not able to do that? And while we're frustrated by not being able to sing yet, there are many, many things for which we can give thanks. Long ago, one of my mentors was he had been a Dutch investment banker before he became a minister. How about that for a career switch? And he wrote a number of books, and in one of them he had an essay about the pilgrims and Thanksgiving. And I do understand that there is much to rewrite in the history, in a lot of our history, of course, reclaiming experiences and voices that were left out in earlier versions of the story. But there is one line in that essay which really imprinted itself in me, and I've remembered it always, and the line is this. He said, "The pilgrims were not grateful that they had survived, but they survived because they were grateful. They were able to survive because they could still see blessing in adversity." And this, I think, is sort of the mantra for us now, too, isn't it? One of my great-grandfathers used to say, he was a person of deep faith, he would say to me, even as a boy, the only prayer you need to say every day is that you ask for the capacity to deal with whatever comes your way. You don't know what's coming. It could be tragedy. It could be exaltation. We don't know when we awaken each morning what's coming. But what we need is the resilience and the capacity to meet what comes. And that's the only worthy prayer to say. And that's another one of those morals that I have bound to heart and conscience. Let us take much of love always into all the struggles of life. And when the recall sounds and the shadows fall, as they must, may we have hearts unembittered by all we have suffered and uncorrupted by all we have enjoyed, both, and be at the last remembered and loved and cherished as those who lived nobly. Happy Thanksgiving, dear ones. Amen.